Very much for joining us here today. We have a very great lecture going on today under the title of Perspectives, Radicalization in the Modern World. And today we have our guest speaker, Lord Gurban Singh of Luton, as well as Bishop Umar Shah, Bishop Emeritus of Peshawar. And we have with us Mr. Bashari of the Third World Solidarity. I don't want to take too much time today with the introductory remarks, but what I would like to do is first invite our chairman, Park Reshi MBE, to give us a bit of introduction first on the topic, as well as to Forum for International Relations Development and the work that we've been doing to tackle radicalization. Mr. Qureshi.
Thank you very much, Umar. Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon to you all. I'm pleased that we have got very learned people here among us today. And I warmly welcome them once again. I will give you a bit of introduction first, how we started our work, so that you can see how big society agenda, what current government has been talking about for a long time, we have fulfilled that agenda since 1999. When we used to sit on the floor, we did not have this singing and dancing, state-of-the-art equipment and big lecture halls and big secretariat. We did not have that. We used to sit on the floor of a mosque where the Jews, the Christians and the Muslims, we used to have a multi-faith forum, and we used to have those discussions. How could we bring the communities together? How could we address extremism? And I remember Umar was at that time probably 11 or 12 years old, when he used to take some lessons, free tutorials of SATs and GCSEs, and then eventually A-level. And then he started working with the organization as volunteer. So we had a huge number of young people. Our dear friend Katrina Robertson, who was the chairperson of that faith forum. Her son, Gabriel, he is studying at university now. I think he's completed his degree. They are with Scottish Heritage. I don't know what's going to happen to Scotland tomorrow. But nevertheless, her son used to be part of that IT program, which used to be run by a local mosque. IT training, website designing. So it is not that the religious communities have been fast asleep and they haven't been aware of the issues the communities were facing locally, nationally, or internationally. Hence the work moved on to national work. When we designed our first European project called SEED, SEED. That was the first project in 2003, designed and executed by us, the Stockwell Green Community Services, the umbrella project. That was a European project to address economic disadvantage and radicalization among young Muslims. So this is how this whole work developed. And then we were the first organization in the UK to pilot the Channel project, which became very controversial, and hence I resigned from the board of that Channel project. But we were the first organization to establish a Prevent project. We were asked then by the Home Office to expand that work throughout London and Yorkshire. So we designed our PALM project, PALM, PALM, Preventative and Lasting Measures. That was also to counter radicalization and to rehabilitate those who were charged under Terrorism Act in this country. Now we have a very sophisticated program which is called TRIM, Transforming Radicals into Models. So we are preparing them as role models. We're working with 2 cases. So radicalization and extremism has been an issue before 9/11 and definitely before 7/7 for us. Hence, our engagement with the other faiths, the Metropolitan Police in London and in Yorkshire and Manchester with the local police heads, the Home Office, the FCO, the Foreign Commonwealth Office, the Communities Department, with the entire governmental structure. And then we invited Pakistan back in 2007, how this issue of radicalization and extremism could be addressed in Pakistan. The senior people, the Director General of Federal Investigation Agency, these kind of people, the Home Secretary, they visited our secretariat in Camberwell and they borrowed our model. It isn't just something which we are doing in isolation. It's a very inclusive program. And not only for the UK, but Spain, Holland, Germany. We have been running a number of programs with the National Offenders Management Service through the Ministry of Justice. And we always strongly say that if someone becomes ill, that person should be looking for the root causes. What happened that the person became ill? The root causes. Hence, number of evaluation reports. Our program, first program was evaluated by the Middlesex University. And that 192 pages report is available on website or internet. The PALM project, that has been also independently evaluated. And we always strongly say to the authorities that the root causes ought to be addressed. Why young people are becoming more and more extremist? Now the questions for the panel here. Has the government failed to address the root causes to the whole issue of extremism? Has the government initiated any process of assessing the root causes to this problem? Has the community as a whole fulfilled its responsibilities in addressing this issue? Regardless of being Christians or Muslims or Jews or Hindus or Sikhs. But extremism is not only to the Muslims now. It has been with the Judaism, with Christianity, with Islam, with Hinduism, with all the religions, faiths. The whole world is struck by this calamity, I call it, or the virus, I call it. There is a far-right extremism in this country. In Europe, day by day it's increasing. So, have the communities failed to fulfill their responsibilities? So I would leave this for the panel and the main speaker, Lord Hussain of Luton, to enlighten us what happened, where we are now, and where we ought to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Qureshi, for that introduction. You've posed some quite interesting questions, and I'm sure they will be quite thought-provoking. I'd like to first ask our speaker, Mr. Shari from Third World Solidarity, to spend just 3 to 4 minutes on an introduction, obviously about Third World Solidarity, and as well to discuss the issue of radicalization in the modern world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Umar Saab. I think it's all right. I can speak without microphone, but I thought I'll put it in front of me just to not speak too loud.
Impressive.
Qureshi Saab, thank you very much for organizing and inviting me to speak on this very important and very current issue. Your long journey is much shorter than the long journey of extremism, because I know that extremism started in Pakistan in 1962. I think some of you might remember there was a base for secret flights of US aeroplanes on Russia, Badabi, which was circled in red in 1962, that if you don't remove these aeroplanes, threat by Russia to Pakistan, we will come and attack you. CIA head of that time visited Pakistan, and he wrote a report when he went back to USA, and he said, we can't fight communism without bringing jihad into Pakistan, because Pakistan is a very liberal, progressive, non-sectarian country, and if we don't put jihad into their minds, it will be very difficult to defeat communism. So I think your journey is very shorter, so we have to look into the history. I think I totally agree with you that prevention is always better than cure. Because if we can prevent radicalization, it will be very important than curing it. Because we know that today it is not only in Pakistan, but it is spread all over the world. ISIS in Iraq, whether it is in Yemen, whether it is in Somalia, Ethiopia, and third world solidarity work in these countries. And our main aim is peace, justice, tolerance, and democracy in the world. And I think it is very important that the British government and the Western world doesn't look at the short-term populist moves, because it is very important that they work beyond 4 years and 5-year elections, that this is a populist move and we will win votes, because day before yesterday, or last Sunday, there was an election in Sweden. My party, or the party which I support and I have supported for past many years, have won it with 32.1%, but they are short of almost 65 seats to form a government, because there is a proportion system, and the right-wing party, who had only 20 seats, have won 13% of the vote in Sweden and have gained 49 seats. So they have become a balancing force. They don't want any immigration. They want to get out of Europe. They want to throw out all the Muslims out of the country. So I think we have seen, as Qureshi Saab has already said, in the Western world, move from a liberal, progressive sort of attitudes to right-wing, reactionary attitudes. We have seen in European election in the United Kingdom, 24 seats have been won by UK, which was known as an anti-immigration and anti-Europe. So I think it is very important to go to the root causes of these issues. Third World Solidarity was established in 1986, 29 years ago, halfway through this extremism. But the reason was when Reagan's aeroplane flew from Thatcher's airports and attacked Libya on 10th of April 1986 to kill him. We said it is a state terrorism. And we said, if you continue with this, and I think we all know that over the last 60 years, 55 countries have been attacked by United States of America. Now I think it has gone to beyond 60, but they have either occupied or attacked these countries. We remember in 2003, and Lord Saab will explain it because I have a very short few minutes. He will explain it. In 2003, there were over 2 million people on the streets of London. I was one of them. Lord Saab resigned from one political party which was in the government, the Labour Party, Tony Blair. So we have been raising this, and Qureshi Saab and their organization, Ford, has been raising it for many years, and we have to continue it wherever we can, because it is very important that this radicalization and extremism should be fought on and confronted as soon as possible. But it has to be based on long-term policies. It has to be looked at the root causes of it. It has to be that we leave the double standards of our foreign policy wherever we can raise this, that you have to look into the issues of Kashmir, Palestine, or not only Ukraine. East Timor became an independent country within weeks. A United Nations resolution was implemented by force on Iraq, but why not on Palestine and Kashmir, another part of the world? So double standard is another thing we have to look into. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I hope I will learn more by my learned speakers than I have to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shai Saab, for giving us that introduction. Definitely the fight for tackling radicalization will continue for many years to come. May I now invite our next speaker, who is Bishop Emeritus of Peshawar, the Right Reverend Rumal Shah. Thank you.
Friends, first of all, let me greet you, to say Assalamu Alaikum, good morning, and whatever else we use in our relationships. I'm deeply grateful to Mr. Qureshi for this assembly and for inviting me personally. I feel a very close affinity with him because we are Grais. Those of you who don't understand the term, means we come from the same area, literally, of Pakistan. So it's a special joy, privilege to be part of this assembly. For what little time we have, I'm going to look at the subject in a very narrow way. But let me introduce myself that I'm a native of Pakistan. That's my native home. Britain is my adopted home. I landed here many decades ago. But for my soul, I felt I must move back. Not because I don't like it here. I think this has given us so much. But also because of the fact that especially people from my community never ever dare to go back. And there was an urge in me, yes, we don't leave Pakistan to escape it, but I think that soil still remains a very dear and precious place for some of us. And God has his own funny ways. I'm Punjabi through and through, but I landed in what today we call the terrorist land, or terrorist capital of the world, the Northwest Frontier Province, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. I landed there 25 years ago. And then in due course of time, God called me to be the head of the Christian community. They are a tiny one, about 100,000 people out of 17 million local population. And it has been the most enriching, most emotional, most purposeful part of my life. I had spent 25 years of working life here, but I still feel that if I had not been where I am today, I would have remained a very incomplete person. The aspect that I want to briefly look at, because radicalization, there could be multifarious reasons for anyone to take the radical path. The most common thing that we see in our human society, human rights, justice, economic issues, political issues, and this has been going on for generations. And ironically, and it's sad to admit that very often it's those movements which in the end have become the hope of people. Never forget that. They have not all remained sort of ostracized people. But I briefly want to look, because that's the perspective I know the best. I'm not an economist, I'm not a sociologist. But the perspective that I want to briefly focus on is radicalization under the influence of faith and religion. I very often say to people, to myself, what I look like, ugly or good, who my parents were, where I was born. I absolutely had no choice. And no human person on the face of this earth can ever say, yes, I chose my parents, I chose the place of my birth. And yet, my relationship with the divine is my choice. No one comes out of the womb of the mother as a Muslim, as a Christian, as a Hindu. It is through the milk of the mother, the nurturing of the parents, the family, the community, that we become what we become. So this is a very precious thing, and I never tire reminding people, for God's sake, this faith and religion is ultimately my choice. It's not a given to me, it's my choice. And perhaps it is the ultimate human rights. But the pain is that when it comes to classifying human rights in today's world, that's the last thing we ever look at. Recently, Madam Pillay of the UN visited Pakistan. She's the highest ranking person for human rights in the world. She issued a final statement of about 2,600 words. And there were 62 words referring to human rights based on religion in Pakistan. Pooh, don't talk about that. Muslims will get angry. Don't talk about that in Britain. Muslims will get angry. And we have made a demon out of it. What I want to say, why do we demonize this very special relationship with God? What is it? And this is the ultimate and most powerful dynamite that we use, at least in our parts of the world. I still remember very clearly as a young man when first time I came to Britain, and you go around London and want to see places that you are wanting to see all your life. And I still remember that's the only time I went. I've never been there back since. I don't know whether they still have the same sessions or not. The Hyde Park Speaker's Corner. It was a great desire to experience that. I was in my late 20s. And I spent whole summer, every Sunday going there and just enjoying the gathering, learning about the British culture. I was absolutely gutted and petrified when one speaker, and that happened almost regularly, talking about faith, religion, God, and they were being heckled. They were being heckled. And I used to say that if we take a vote of this assembly out there, maybe 8 out of 10 would say, which God? Who is God? And yet, you go to Pakistan or to South Asia, we talk about the same topic. 10 out of 10 will say, whether they believe it or not, but on the face of it, they will say, Amen, Amen, Amen. So this basically, sir, Precious Sahib, if I may say so, which our people here don't appreciate, this is one of the basic problems of understanding. Today, I think I don't need to tell you, because you live here, I don't live here anymore, that the biggest threat of a kind is secularism, which has completely invaded Europe and the West. Secularism which completely wants to deny the essence of faith and religion. And somehow, when those of us here, and at this stage we are basically looking at the British Muslims, when they use their faith as the motivation, we suddenly straight away label them as terrorists, as radicals, as this, as that. And in one sense it's understandable. Why should religion, a sacred thing, be used for such purposes? And yet that is the dynamic force that religion has, which no other issue has as strongly and completely takes hold of you as religion does. And especially those of us who come from our part of the world. It is both a plus and a minus. Because in our country, sadly, and that hurts us, people like me in Pakistan, our identity is religion. And sadly, Pakistani, number two, first is, are you Muslim, are you Christian, are you Hindu, whatever you are. And there is nothing more hurtful than that. Why should, in terms of citizenship, that be the identity? But then, in question answer or otherwise in private, I can say a lot about why that has happened to us in Pakistan, but I don't want to go into that. But here simply, I want to beg of people, those here and those outside, let's not desecrate, let's not pollute, let's not demonize religion and faith. It's the most sacred thing we have. One of the biggest shocks that I had on my kind of final return to Pakistan, that I grew up there, I studied there, etc., etc. I left the first time in my late 20s. Never until then, never had we experienced the desecration of the sacred spaces in Pakistan. सवाल ही नहीं पैदा होता कि जाके किसी मस्जिद या church या temple or any place you would, that will be the ultimate curse on you. And today, it happens every day. And woe betide those people who do it and those who back it up and those who keep quiet about it. There is nothing worse than that. That a place where we acknowledge and you want to relate to the Almighty. We piss over it, we do human excretion. I have with my own hands, I picked up Bibles with human excrement in Pakistan. But leave those, the massacre. My heart at the moment is absolutely bleeding because on coming Monday will be the first anniversary of the Peshawar massacre also. The worst in Pakistan's history, where, and the paper reflection, after 4 months, I wrote a little paper just to share my pain. And the title I gave really upset people. The title I gave, Pray and Be Blown into Pieces. Pray and be blown into pieces. That is exactly what happened. So why should religion, the most sacred thing of our life, be used for such purposes? I was in Denmark about 5+ years ago, a couple of years after these dreaded damn cartoons which those people published. And of course the usual story, we were attacked in Peshawar and I have a daughter who's a young mother now. She was totally traumatized and that girl has never recovered. That's the price we paid for something we never committed. I was put on a television, live television in Copenhagen, 5 minutes. And I made one plea to the Danish people. for God's sake, learn to respect the sacred space. Whosever sacred space it may be. Muslim, atheist, Hindu, whatever. And of course I told them to pieces over, oh, it's a freedom of speech, that's nonsense. I don't want to go into that because I have no time at this stage. But respect for the sacred space is at the heart of whether you are a believer or not. And it is this aspect which our radicalized young people who use religion as the way of radicalization has completely abandoned. And I only hope and pray that those of us who wish to engage with them simply focus on that. Because if anybody in this room knows what radicalization on religious basis is, perhaps I can say I know it. One of the most defining moments for me, where for a moment I lost faith in humanity, was that a police inspector was killed in the south of my province, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Next day it was his funeral in Sawar. And those bastards, forgive my language, but that's how you feel. Those bastards even tore the dead body into pieces. That day I said, you see on natural history programs, and yeah, I happened to see that, a group of dogs moving around. And a dead dog, they did not tear it into pieces. They respected the dead body of the dead boy. Have we, in the name of radicalization, in the name of religious motivation, and they were Muslims, have we gone to that extreme of deprivation that we would even tear to pieces a dead body? And this is where my heart breaks. Why have we allowed religion to be so abused? For God's sake. And you know, those of you who are Muslims here, I'm Christian here, find me one religion in the world, and I do have a bit of study of bits and pieces of each of those. Find me one which says, go and butcher people, do this, be nasty. We all talk about what we so glibly say these days, love, peace, blah, blah, blah. But why this ugly aspect of that is so powerfully manifested in today's world? I can go on, but I think I must stop and really very passionate appeal that please, please, please inculcate the love for the sacred space, whoever the devil it may be, because that is what your faith compels you to believe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bishop Umar Shah. We really appreciate your words, and we see the emotion and passion that lies behind those words as well, and I think we all agree with that. I'd like now to invite our main guest, our keynote speaker, Lord Qurban Hussain of Luton, to address the audience. I can see quite a few notes made here, so we'll just get right into it. Ulsa, please take the stage.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to you all. I'm thankful to the chairman of FIRD, Mr. Qureshi, for inviting me here today and giving me the opportunity to speak to you all. Forgive me if I make any mistakes, as it is my first experience of speaking in front of so many researchers and scholars. I have spoken at various occasions, but this is unique in many ways. I'm not an expert on the issue, by any means, but I'm going to share my experiences and my knowledge with you. I am an ordinary working family man who happened to have joined the House of Lords 3 or 4 years ago. Therefore, my perspective will be a perspective of an ordinary British citizen of Muslim faith. How I see things. First of all, the word radicalism. It is from Latin, and it means roots. And it is used for society to be changed, and that these changes are only possible through revolutionary means. That is the explanation of meaning of this or meanings of this word. However, in the world that we live today, here in the UK and around the world, this word is usually used and understood to be linked with Islamic extremism and terrorism. Wherever it is used, although it has so vast meaning, but as soon as people hear the word radicalization, they link it with Islamic terrorism and extremism. At the moment, the United Kingdom government has raised its threat levels to severe in the last week of August 2014 in response to the rise of militant Islamists in Iraq and Syria, some of whom came from Britain. As we understand, around 500 British Muslims are estimated to have joined groups like ISIS, but many of us believe the number could be much higher. Along with more than 1,000 volunteers from other Western countries. Notably, the murder of American James Foley in a video released by ISIS appeared to have a British accent. In the statement delivered from Downing Street in London, the UK Prime Minister David Cameron said Britain was facing a greater and deeper threat to our society than we have known before. He said confronting ISIS was part of a generational struggle that he thought could last decades. That is the situation that we find ourselves in. But if we go back a little and to see why Britain becomes a target, or why should the British be targeted anywhere in the world? Just in a couple of sentences, if you go back to the Second World War and at the end of which the British Empire came to an end, largely I believe, what I read, although I wasn't born then, but what I read, that the Muslim countries who became independent after the Second World War, Britain enjoyed a reasonably good relationship with them all. And British people were respected highly in many of the Islamic countries. Although the British foreign policy on many areas, such as Palestine and Kashmir, has always been criticized from the day one. However, it never came to any sort of radicalization or terrorism, but the British foreign policy was criticized. Although Mr. Lashari has made some reference to events in 1960s in Pakistan, but I think we all know that the present wave of radicalization, extremism, and terrorism is linked to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. That is, we will have to accept, that is the time when we all in the West, including America and Britain, in fight against the Soviet Union, we supported whoever wanted to or were able to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan. And we supported those madrasas in northwest of Pakistan and Afghanistan, and which produced jihadis in thousands every year. They continued, they did a good job, the job that they were given, they pushed the Russians out with the help of America and Britain and the West. Pakistan was always supported by the West for that. But we all know what happened after that. As soon as the Russians went back, the West left the scene, left those madrasas intact. The armored groups and the ammunition, the most modern weaponry that they were supplied to fight the Russians were left in their hands. And it was Pakistan who was left to deal with the aftermath. Since then, the whole world has suffered, no doubt, but the biggest sufferer in that has been Pakistan. So far, every day, almost every day, there are bomb blasts, suicidal attacks, which never used to happen in Pakistan. The Pakistan that I left in 1970s never used to have bomb blasts and these suicidals. But Pakistan is still paying the price. Over 50,000 lives have been lost in these years. Not only that, the extremist ideology that has been spread throughout Pakistan, as a result of which our bishop has illustrated some of those. It is not only Muslims against Christians, it is Sunnis against Wahhabis, Wahhabis against Shias, and whoever they can find a difference with. The mosques are being blown up, the shrines are being blown up, the churches are being blown up, the Hindu mandirs are being blown up.
The girls.
Absolutely. The shrines, the bars, you know. This extremist ideology is not part of the belief of the general Muslims in Pakistan that I know. Pakistani society is a very liberal society. I travel back and forth to Pakistan quite often. Although I've lived, as I said, I've been here from early 70s, so that makes it more about 40, 45 years. But I haven't seen that kind of radicalization or extremism in the general society as such. I have been to areas where people from other faiths live side by side. I have relatives in Gujarat, where there's a Christian community in Gujarat, and the harmony that I have seen between the communities who live there, it is no different than the harmony that we enjoy here in UK. That's the local people. These extremists who come and target the mosques, the temples, the churches, and the minority communities, they are the extremists. And quite frankly, I think the Pakistani population, by and large, they reject.
Yes.
And some of those believers of that ideology happen to live in UK too. And I have confronted those, or some of those, for many years. But you know what? When the Iran-Iraq war began, I understand some experts went to Henry Kissinger and asked him, who should we support? He said, I think we should support both, because we want both of them to win. And in some cases, sometimes I should say, I wonder whether that is the policy we are adopting here. We are supporting the both parties because we want both to win. Because let me give you a personal story. I was a parliamentary candidate in 2005 for the first time from Luton South. And I confronted this Anjum Chowdhury's lot, Al-Majroon, in Luton, who were following me every step of the way, would not let me go on my canvassing at all, intimidated me, humiliated me, and then made videos and put on YouTube. I reported it more than 5 times. I had to call the police. I only called police when I had absolute no other option. I begged them. I said, look, I have nothing to do with you. I'm not campaigning for you. I'm a parliamentary candidate. Please go away. And they will not. And at the end, I had to pack my bags up and go. 5 times I called the police when they came. Half the time I had spent already with the extremists, and the other half I spent with the police, giving them the statements. And I thought they were all getting investigated. At the end, last day before the elections, I was given a life threat. And that was the time when the police came with, with all these vehicles and dogs and everything else and arrested 1 or 2 people. The following day was election day. And I thought, I've given my statements and hopefully, they have been investigated. But nearly 3 months down the line, I was sitting at home and I had a phone call from the police station. A young police recruit asked me, could I speak to Mr. Hussain? I said, which Hussain do you want? Because my 2 sons are also called Hussains. This is Kurban Hussain. I said, yes, we're speaking to him. He said, oh, sir, I'm a new person, and I've just opened this drawer, and there are some inquiries regarding yourselves going back to April, and this was August. I said, pardon? Are they not investigated? As soon as I started questioning him, he realized that, oh, perhaps I shouldn't have told him this. And he's mumbled, oh, no, perhaps I'm new, perhaps maybe I should call you later. And he put his phone down. Of course, I was furious. Picked up the phone and got on to the police chief of the Bedfordshire. I met him. He said, he put his hand up, he says, Mr. Hussain, I have to tell you that I don't know much about it. What exactly is going on the ground? Obviously, he doesn't possibly know which case has been investigated and which is not. And I didn't blame him for that. But he said, what I can do is, I can put a special inquiry in. I said, fine. Special inquiry comes, they investigated, and they proved me right. And of course I was right. I got an apology letter from the police chief. And the only thing they were prepared to do was to deal with the life threat. I said, a particular incident in the string of events which led up to this, you are not investigating that. You're investigating only one event. And I know they are going to get free from it. They're not going to be even imprisoned for it. Perhaps, a short sentence. What I want is a full investigation of all the incidents. It never took place. So I withdrew my case. If that's not going to happen, I'm going to withdraw my case. So sometimes I go back to the quote of Henry Kissinger. I suspect maybe we are supporting the both parties. Now coming to those who are fighting in Syria and in Iraq, well, slightly, I should go back to what Mr. Lashari said about Iraq war. Iraq war was a biggest blunder of our government too. When we followed the Americans blindly. Millions of people of this country marched up and down the streets of this great nation, from London to Glasgow, and the government took no notice. We all knew that tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands, are going to be killed, innocent people are going to be killed. I was born in Kashmir. I know what the wars are like. And we were feeling so emotional about it that we didn't want the war. I was so upset that on the day the Iraq war began, I resigned from the Labour Party and joined the Liberal Democrats, because that was the party which in Parliament, it was united against the war. Not a single member of Parliament from the Liberal Democrats was supporting the war. So on that principle, I joined the Liberal Democrats. But can I say that those who are fighting against the regimes in Syria, or who fought against the regime and still are in some cases in Iraq, we have been with the Americans. I have to tell you that even wherever I have been able to advise our government, coalition government, I said, don't throw your ammunition blindly. You don't know who is getting ammunition in Syria. But nobody will listen. Although the British were perhaps saying, we are careful, but whether the Americans were, I'm not so sure. So the ammunition which has been thrown into whoever was able to or willing to fight against the regimes in Syria and Iraq or Libya was given to them, and now we feel that perhaps they are a danger for us. Well, perhaps we shouldn't have supported it in the first place. We should have been very careful who we are supporting. But these wars have radicalized many more people. Hatred against the British and the Americans and the West has increased around the world. I used to travel the world with my red passport, or before that, as a grey British passport, proudly. People used to respect me for being a British citizen, but no longer. I have to hide my identity as a British citizen even when I go to Pakistan to see my relatives. Because I don't know who is going to, shoot at me and say, he's a British. This is what we have gained from the wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, and in Syria. Hatred against our own citizens. We want to make friends in the world. We don't want more enemies in the world. We want this place, this earth, to be more peaceful. And this is not a way to make the world more peaceful. And of course, we have to look at our foreign policy. Our open-ended support for Israel, with all the human rights violations that take place inside Israel, and the periodic incursions into Gaza, Lebanon and others to crush the Palestinians, men, women and children. The latest war in Gaza, the social media has revealed, all sorts of atrocities. Let me say that by no means I have ever, or I will, support the Palestinian throwing rockets into Israel either. I think that's wrong. But to make that as an excuse and go and kill babies and children and mothers and elderly, civilians, and demolish the whole towns and villages, and the British government doesn't really tell Israel to stop it. Can we not even stop supplying ammunition to Israel? Can we not pressurize them by boycotting their goods? This is what radicalizes the young people in this country. We need to look at our policies. We need to have fair and just policies within our country and abroad. And if the Palestinian issue and the Kashmir issue are resolved, I think half of the problem of the world perhaps may be resolved. These foreign policy mistakes or blunders or decisions on the foreign policy have radicalized people in this country more and more. 7/7 was one of those tragic events which we, the Muslim community, 99.999% have condemned it, as we have done with the 9/11. But the radicalization continues because of the other events taking place around the world, which the British government doesn't have a clear policy on, or at least it has. If there is a policy, it's a wrong one. And we need to look at that. I have to say that Islam, I haven't read nowhere, and I have read a bit of Islam, at least enough for myself to be a good Muslim. What I have read, the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he always said, respect the other religions, places of worship. Don't kill innocent people. Even in the wars, you don't kill men, women, children, and elderly, and the sick. It goes as far as don't destroy crops, don't destroy fruit trees in wars, let alone killing innocent people or destroying churches or places of other worship. And says, even don't be disrespectful to the other people's religious important people, because they will do the same to you, and you wouldn't like it. My advice to people here, to the Muslims in this country, is not to trust the internet and social media, as some material may have dangerous influences on vulnerable minds. Instead, Muslims must get proper religious advice from knowledgeable, respected, and qualified imams. Join the Not in My Name campaign, which has been launched a few days ago, to say that these atrocities that people are committing, beheading other people, innocent people, killing innocents, we are not with it. We don't support it, not in our name. For the British government, as I've already said, that we need to have a look at our foreign policy and make it more just and fair, and support and have a respect for the international law indiscriminately across the globe, and call for an end to double standards. I.e., when Mr. Lashari was speaking about the island, East Timor, sorry, for a minute the East Timor, or South Sudan, which have become independent through the United Nations resolutions. Well, there are resolutions, and not one or two. There are many, many resolutions for Kashmir and Palestine too. And only if the British government was prepared to play their role. If we are prepared to give the right to Scottish people to decide about their future, why are we scared of telling the same to India and Israel, to give the right to people of Israel, of Palestine and Kashmir? I can't see the logic behind it. We are giving this. We are prepared to give that right to the people of our own country, if they want to depart from the United Kingdom. But we are not asking our friends to do the same. And at home, the government needs to take radical steps to stamp out inequalities, racism, and Islamophobia from the country and encourage more integration. Enforcement of laws against individuals and organizations spreading hatred, and have a de-radicalization and rehabilitation program instead of criminalizing those returning from Iraq and Syria. Rather than putting them in prison, because initially we were supporting the anti-regime forces in those places, and if these people have gone to do just what we wanted them to do, on the return, I think it's unfair to criminalize them. They should be rehabilitated. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude my speech here, and if there are any questions, I'll be willing to take at the end.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What a wonderful analysis by our wonderful speakers, and particularly Lord Hussain of Luton. I made 3-4 very important notes here, where the panelists have rightly pointed out that the attacks in Pakistan are not only happening just at one community. It is on the mosques or shrines or mandars or churches, and even on the army barracks, army headquarters, naval headquarters, general headquarters, where the chief of army sits. And Lord Qurban very eloquently pointed out that this menace of extremism, as a matter of fact, started mainly when the former Soviet Union tried to invade and keep the control over Afghanistan. But eventually, the international policy became to involve the madrasa and Islam by the CIA. And they transformed the state policy of Pakistan to involve madrasas and Islam. It is not the Islam and madrasa, they influenced the policy. That is not true. Islam was influenced by the state policy, and state policy of Pakistan was influenced by the CIA or the international policy. So Pakistan has given sacrifices for decades, and I think it's about time now to stand up and accept the truth and extend our helping hand to Pakistan to become an economically and politically viable state. Otherwise, this menace of terrorism has kind of damaged Pakistan in such a way that our generations for decades would suffer. They are suffering now, they will continue to suffer. So this is our moral obligation, political obligation for the international community to support Pakistan. And of course, like Lord Qurban has mentioned as well, Indo-Pak relation is fueling extremism in both countries. So the relationship between India and Pakistan, that has to be normalized. And I would not like the approach what Britain and United States have taken in this regard. They are saying that India thinks this is interference in their personal problem. It is a regional problem. They will resolve these problems in Pakistan. And for 4 decades, this is what we have been hearing now. And I think it's about time that the international community take ownership and show some commitment and willingness to enter into this dialogue. If we can get East Timor and Southern Sudan on the map of this universe, then why can't we look into the other international issues with regards to India, Pakistan, Israel and Palestine. And the other issue was again very reasonably raised here, that the communities, like Lord Gurban himself went through a great difficult time when he was chased and heckled by the extremists. I have the same example here. I had to move out of Lambeth for 1 year because of those extremists who were chasing us and who are now in for 40 years. And when we complained about those people to the police, and it wasn't just me, it was the imams of the mosques. Many people, they say, oh, the mullahs are not supporting in countering extremism. It was the mullahs, they approached the police. It was the imams of the mosque, they approached the police. These guys are extremists and they are terrorists and we really want to get rid of them, take them away from us. They are ruining the community cohesion, the good relationship which you established in years. But like Lord Gurban said, that this is exactly what happened. The police did not take any action, and it is in my book as well, the book I've written, Mera Jihad. It is clearly written in that book as well, this whole story. The police said to me, Mr. Qureshi, I'm sorry, our hands are tied. We cannot do it unless they commit something. Well, you will take some action when they'll kill me. It's too late then. So I was advised, as a matter of fact, to move out of Lambeth for 1 year. So this is how the authorities were fast asleep when the communities were taking lead on this whole issue of extremism. So to me, the question I posed to the panelists was, has the community failed? Or have the communities at large failed to address this issue? I honestly believe that community was really at the forefront of this issue. I don't think the communities have failed. I strongly believe that whether they're Pakistanis or Indians or Muslims or non-Muslims, they have been trying very hard to work with the communities at large as well as the authorities to counter that issue. Nonetheless, at that time, authorities were not willing to cooperate with the community. The second issue was raised in the beginning. Has the government assessed the situation in an effective manner and has provided the adequate solutions and response to this issue? I think that has been very clearly said by Lord Hussain of Luton, that probably not. So now I leave the floor for questioning. If there's any question, please raise your hand, tell your name, and then you please. Mr. Sheikh.
Lord Gurban Hussain, thank you very much for a very eloquent discourse this afternoon. Of course, the one from the Bishop was very passionate. We were at a lecture last night of Victoria Schofield, who informed us that a recent debate at the House of Commons, which lasted for nearly 4 hours, most speeches that were made there, the debate was about the Kashmir issue and India and Pakistan's involvement in the issue. Most British parliamentarians who actually spoke in the House of Commons said that this is not a British problem. This is a problem which is to be resolved between the two political governments, and that was the conclusion, and this should not be debated in the House of Commons. So it's a sad reflection on, of course, the British have left that problem. They acknowledge it now that the British did leave that problem in Pakistan. She gave a very good perspective of the history and everything. So how would you look at this situation in terms of, you're a party that is in government now. How would you look at this situation in terms of a resolution, or what role can Britain play in having that conclusion to such an important question that has been left wide open? That's one question. The other question is that, what Lashari Sahib pointed out, is that the radicalization is not just amongst the Muslims of Britain or of Europe or of the rest of the world. You've got a problem at hand now when you have the right-wing parties dominating your political scene, in Europe in particular. I'm not sure what's happening in the United States. How do you see that being an issue that's just cropped up? You've got 24 European members of parliament. You've got an election coming up next year. God alone knows how many of these guys will get into government, and they are politically elected. How is the government going to deal with those situations?
Okay, look, we take 3 questions. We take 3 questions, and then Dr. Sam will respond. Yes, please.
My name is Syed Ahmed. I am the School of Business leader here in this college, and lecturer also. Lord Qurban, do you see in the days to come a general feeling of odium or hatred towards the Muslim community at large? Because the press, for instance, I am a commuter. I travel almost 3 hours every day. So in the metro, you know, the barbaric photo of Fowley being beheaded, the murderer holding the dagger with a mask. Now that gives the feeling that, you know, the Muslims in general, perhaps they are given to extremism. So do you see in the days to come a general feeling of hatred towards the entire Muslim community residing in Britain?
Thank you. One more question. Yes, please.
My name is Khanzada Ejazali. As Lord Qurban has mentioned already, but what I think is that Israel has been attacking Gaza, and we were sitting quiet over here on the killing of our young children, women, old people, and everybody. And we did not did anything against Israel. As you have mentioned that we could have stopped the, boycott them on business and relations and things, everything. But if 2 people, 3 people have been beheaded in 5,000 miles away from here in Iraq, and we are now looking and trying to find out the ways to attack the jihadists over there, and we are cursing them and we are giving them all sort of bad names and everything. Is it not, sir, your duty as our representative in the parliament that you should raise this question, that why we are now going against Syria and Iraq, and we have done nothing against Israel when they were doing the same thing and even more than that in Gaza. That's all, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Question. Okay. Well, the first question on Kashmir. One thing that I have noticed, and I've said it in the beginning, perhaps not as clear. Let me make it clear though. The Kashmir policy of all 3 major parties is no different from one to another. I have certainly worked on the Kashmir campaign for the last 30 odd years. And the only difference, if you write to the Foreign Office, the only difference in the reply will be the name of the minister at the bottom. Otherwise, the statement will be all the same. What we have been getting for the last 30 years. It is between the 2 countries, and we will be only engaged if both of them request. But that has not discouraged those who are fighting for the rights of Kashmiri people. We still campaign for the right of the Kashmiri people as we did 30 years ago. And Kashmiri people are determined to continue with their struggle. One thing that I keep reminding my fellow members of the House of Lords, that when Indian Army took control of Kashmir in 1948, they thought, well, that's it. These bare-handed freedom fighters, they have no chance now. But they were wrong. Kashmiris continued with their struggle. They had already got Sheikh Abdullah, the undisputed leader of the time of the Kashmiri people. They had him on his side for a short time because they promised him quite a few things. And they thought, well, the only ultimate leader other than the Maharaja, the Muslim majority leader is Sheikh Abdullah. We got him on our side. We have taken the control of the Kashmir Valley and Jammu, and nothing is going to happen. But when he challenged them after a few years, they said, well, come on, where are the promises? You said you'll give us all these rights. You know, we'll have a pretty much independent state. What India did, within 5 years of independence, they put him in prison. Sheikh Abdullah stayed in prison from 1952 to 1964. He did not budge.
12 years.
Not only that, he was released for about 9 months. He came and visited the West as well, went back, and he was arrested again. He was released in 1974. By that time, Sheikh Abdullah had become very old, and he more or less gave up. And he signed a piece of paper, whatever the Indian government put in front of him. And he came out. Out of prison, he became the chief minister again. And they thought, well, now that we've got Sheikh Abdullah on our side, it's all going to be hunky-dory. Now, you know, Kashmiris will live with us. They didn't. The next generation, in 1980s, they thought, okay, the Sheikh, he was too old, he gave up. The third generation, they started demanding their rights. And the Governor Raj was opposed in 1988. And since then, the Kashmiris, when they were pushed against the wall, they had no option. They took up arms. I'm not supporting arms struggle anywhere, but they were left with no option. And of course, the armed struggle has been going on for many years. Now, after 9/11, the whole scenario has changed, and nobody anywhere in the world, except where we want, to support the armed struggle. And of course, the West is not supporting any armed struggle against India. And the Kashmiris understand that scenario very well. They put the arms down, but they're still wanting their right of self-determination. And I can tell you, I have friends and relatives on both sides of the line of control. They are not going to sit in peace until they get their right. And we will not stop reminding the British government that what it is at risk at the moment, two nuclear powers facing each other. At one stage, they will have to resolve this issue peacefully. Otherwise, if there is a war, and they have had 3 wars, but they were not nuclear wars. And if there is a war, it is not going to be a limited war. And we have a responsibility as a permanent member of the Security Council. Britain has a responsibility of keeping peace in the world, and I think we ought to play our role and help India and Pakistan to resolve this issue according to the willing of the Kashmiri people. Now, the far-right extremism, there is a danger. We are all concerned, as any minority in any country will be if there is a rise against there is a rise in hatred against them, as the Christians in Pakistan or other minorities elsewhere. But one thing that gives me hope, this right wing has been in existence in this country. And when we were young, it was National Front. Then it was BNP.
When you were comparatively younger, you're still young.
I'm a young lord. And what had happened with time, they tried to gain the support of the general British public. But I think the British people are sensible people. A few years ago, the BNP managed a few seats on the council in Berlin, Oldham, and 1 or 2 other cities. Only for once, though, the next time, the British people didn't vote for them. They knew they were they're racist thugs. And in the long run, I think the British people, they're not racist. By vast majority, 99.99% are not racist at all. And they will reject them. Even if they manage to get 1 or 2 seats here and there, I can tell you in the long run, I'm very hopeful the British people will reject them. And therefore, I'm not talking about Europe, because I have not much knowledge about Europe, but certainly that is how I see Britain. But we have extra responsibility. We don't want to give no excuse to any right wing to take any excuse and attack the Muslim community for it. One thing has to be said, and I always say, action of 1 or 2 people or a small minority in any community must not be seen as a representative of that particular community. If 1 or 2 Muslims or Christians, for that matter, go and do something nasty somewhere in the world, well, why will you blame the whole community for it? Criminals are criminals, terrorists are terrorists, they don't have a religion. And we must see them that way, and hopefully British people will not support the right wing as they expect to get their support. Now, general feeling of hatred of Muslims at rise. There is a danger, as I have said. There is a danger, but I'm hopeful. I hope that I have incorporated your question, answer to your question as well, sir, at the back, in my last answer. Gaza, mass killings, and Iraq and Syria. This is what I have said about double standards. We must not have double standards anymore. A life is a life. A human is a human, whether he is Muslim, Christian, British, Iraqi, or whoever. It should not be that if one Israeli dies, well, that's too much, we can't take that. But if 1,000 Palestinians die, we just count the numbers. I was witnessing some of these incidents or events on television. When one Israeli dies, well, there's a huge coverage. Oh, he was a father, he was a loving husband, he was an active member of the community like it. I condemn the killing of that person too. But at the same time, those thousands killed in Gaza were also fathers and brothers and husbands and community members. Why do we forget them? We should give equal importance to all human beings. I think
Thank you very much.
It is just very briefly, I think I stood against when we tried to intrude into Afghanistan. It was first we and then Russia came in. I traveled in 1978 to Afghanistan when it was taken over by communists. Yesterday it was communist. Today it is Muslims. And this is a circle of history which is going on. It will carry on. We have to play a role. Yesterday it was a bipolar world, and we are now reaping the fruit of unipolar world, which we helped to create. And I think tomorrow there will be a multipolar world, and we should work for it, and we should continue. And just one point on in January 2003, there was a vote in the parliament. 149 MP voted against it, and the majority of them were Labour Party, and still I support Labour Party. 80.
Just as a closing comment, I little bit felt out of place. Rightly so, because I think your focus is on the British society and you being the active members of that. And I think my heart still feels that with your sentiments and with your relationships with your native land, there has to be greater concern and interest than just, with all due respect, Kashmir issue has been with us for the last 60 plus years, and I don't see any new arguments. A couple of years ago, there were statistics that in a period of, I think, 8 to 9 years, there were 45,000 Pakistanis killed. And they were not all terrorists. Majority, more than half of them were ordinary civilians.
Not half, really. 99%
Percent.
people were innocent
And,
people.
is there a way of understanding, explaining why we are still going through that agony in that land of ours? So, but I'm happy to have participated, but I somehow felt that the focus rightly, I think it's your perspective on Britain, and rightly so. But
Thank you.
there is the other side, and I think we should not forget why it is happening out there. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.
Just to share with you that when the church in Peshawar was attacked, I personally visited the bishop's place in Peshawar and met the current Bishop of Peshawar, Bishop Humphrey, and also met Bishop Robert Shah, so that we could share our sympathies and condolences. And our think tank offered them with scholarships for the affectees. And Mr. Rana Khan, a good friend of ours, Right Reverend, he is leading on this whole scholarship program with the churches in Pakistan. So we are really sad what is going on in Pakistan, but I'm pleased that the Bishop has picked up this point, that our more concentration was on the British society here, where we are facing this menace day in, day out. And Lord Hussain has very eloquently put this across to us, that how many things have contributed towards this whole menace. Lastly, I think
Just one point of clarification, perhaps. On the issue of minorities in Pakistan, I have never hidden my views about the protection of minorities at all. I have spoken on the killings, or it wasn't killing, it was people who were pushed out in Lahore, in a particular area. Christian community was pushed out by the land mafia. And that was the time when I spoke out, and I actually, when I met Shabazz Sharif, I raised it with him. I said, why is this happening? And he promised me that, Lord Sahib, what I'm going to do when I'm going to go back, I will make sure that those who are being pushed out, they get their places back. Or if that is not the right place, we will make sure that they get a place to live. Now, I haven't had any feedback.
you forgot after
I think this is the best time to call him again.
I think he may have, his line probably will be engaged now. But anyway, Mr. Sahib, just to tell you that I have raised the issues of Pakistani minorities.
Minorities की बात नहीं कर रहा, मतलब nation as a whole, yeah, वो तो हमारी तो है कहानी बस. Let's look at the nation as a whole and.
yes, Pakistani nation. Yes, I agree with.
Thank you very much. I think we've had a very good session there. Just to close the session, may I call our good friend Reverend Rana Khan to offer the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, all these great people who shared from their heart, from their mind, and from their full strength. And may I also thank our good friend Umar for arranging this event and inviting all of us. It's a great prayer to work and to support FIRD in many ways, and those who are involved in this intellectual discourse and exercise. Quite often they come here and to listen one another. We all appreciate Mr. Toha Quraishi and for his services for the wider community in this country, not just in this country, people in Pakistan, whether they belong to Muslim communities or other faiths, they all appreciate what he is doing here and there. Let's give them big hands.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask that the audience just be seated for 2 seconds while the guests go on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Umar.
Thank you.